Baik, kita mulai membahas tentang bagaimana menulis background, apa saja isi dari background itu sebaiknya. Untuk pertemuan kali ini ada dua hal yang diharapkan bisa dicapai. Yang pertama itu mudah-mudahan saja dengan penjelasan kali ini Anda sudah bisa nanti menyusun background untuk waktu yang ditentukan, yakni selama kurang lebih 2 minggu. Tapi kalau ada yang selesai sebelumnya boleh diupload, dikirimkan ke saya. Ya, tidak harus menunggu sampai batas waktu terakhir baru dimasukkan, boleh saja lebih cepat. So you are expected to be able to write appropriate research background. Jadi kita akan bicarakan tentang apa saja isi background yang baik itu. Kemudian Anda bisa mengutip karya orang lain dari jurnal atau dari buku dengan benar, kemudian menuliskan di daftar pustakanya dengan benar, sesuai dengan panduan kita yang mengikuti APA, American Association, American Psychological Association. Ya, ini dua tujuan besar untuk sesi kita hari ini. Ya, kita akan bicara yang pertama mengenai latar belakang dari usulan penelitian. Basically, the content of the introduction would be these elements: the specification of the point, the topic, the study, and then some explanation and description about why the topic is relevant and interesting. It should be written in such a way that the reader will be interested and eager to know more about the topic that we are going to investigate. And then you are also include the result of your analysis of available literature or the studies that have been done before, in order that we can justify where your research will belong to, or to indicate the research gap. And then you have to be able to specify the research questions. And basically, research question may be preceded by this description of the problem in one paragraph, for example, before you generate the research questions. And then this is the most important part, actually. Yeah. How you are going to summarize the previous work, the related research that has been done before, and then how the study that you are going to investigate will benefit us, will benefit our profession, whether in terms of theory development, or probably policymakers, or benefit the practitioners, the learners, the teachers. And if you could show that, that means that the research problem is really important to investigate. And then the last part is not obligatory. This is only an optional. You may want to show at the end of chapter 1, for example, how the proposal is structured. What is the content of the proposal? So it is optional. Okay, let's see what is really in the background. The first one is to establish the context of the research. In many cases, many of you have written in your last assignment, presenting the background starting with a very broad statement. The statement like the English language as an international language. Actually, it is not necessary because that will be too broad. Okay, if you are talking about, for example, vocabulary or reading, and then you may start with vocabulary. You may want to show how vocabulary plays an important role in acquiring the language skills, for example. You may start with that. You may also start about the uh, studies or research studies that have been done so far. You may want to say something like there has been a lot of studies that have been done in relation to vocabulary building and the development of language skills. If you do that, then you have a lot of opportunity to explain about different types of study, the relationship between vocabulary and any other language skill like listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and also the vocabulary and grammar, for example. So start with the variable that you are investigating rather than starting with a broad statement about the language. And then you move on to more specific one. You explain why this particular research topic is important, essential to understand the main aspect of the study. Yeah. If you are talking about, for example, vocabulary, and then you'll explain about, once again, the role of vocabulary in acquiring other language skill, and then how vocabulary is acquired. If you are trying to relate it with reading, and then you will also explain about reading and how those two variables relate one another. How vocabulary will support the reading ability, the reading comprehension of a learner, for example. That is why you want to investigate that. When you can explain clearly about the what is the topic, for example, you can show that vocabulary plays an important role in developing the reading skill, and then that will show that your topic is necessary to investigate. You want to know how the vocabulary mastery of particular students, and then how their reading ability, and then you want to correlate that whether your finding later will also will support the previous findings about the relationship between vocabulary and reading, for example. So you have to show the importance of the topic that you are going to investigate. In order to do that, uh, once again, you have to read a lot of research studies related to your topic, because later you are going to summarize those findings, how the research are coming together, or they may have some contradictory findings between one study and the other study, between several studies and other studies. They may agree one another, may also disagree one another. So you have to find out in order that you can justify that your research is really necessary to conduct in order to support either you agree or you disagree with the relationship between the two variables, for example. So this is actually the content of the study background. These questions will lead you what you are going to write in the background. The first one, what is known about the broad topic? So just now I mentioned about vocabulary and reading, for example, and then you you have to find out number of studies on this topic, and then you will show us that we already know about this topic until so far this way. That will be based on the research studies done before. That is the important of what is the previous related studies to summarize or to analyze. That will give us information about what we already know about the topic. Uh, by that way, then we can show the gap. If someone asks you about the gaps, what is the gap of your study, then you will not able to do that without any standing of where we are now, what you already know about the topic. And then from what we know, from what we already know now to what we want to achieve, your goal, for example, of doing the research. So there is a distance between what you already know and then what you want to lead to. So the target, the objective that you are going to investigate will show the gap. So there is still some kind of missing chain, missing link between what you already know and then what you want to achieve. That is what we mean by gap. Okay. So gap will be shown by identifying what the people or the researchers have done before, and then what we are going to investigate now. That means that we are not replicating others, but we want to go further from what they have already done. So that will be the gap. Okay. And then you have to also show the answer to this question. What is the significance of addressing those gaps? So for example, if you are investigating the relationship between vocabulary and reading, and some studies before have identified the positive correlation between the two variables, but there are few studies indicating that there is no significant correlation. And then you want to justify whether your study will support the first one rather than the latter one. And then by saying that if you could find out the significant correlation, there might be some implication for that. If there is a significant correlation between vocabulary and reading, that means that classroom interaction or classroom lesson should always emphasize the acquisition of larger size of vocabulary in order that the students or the learners may read well, because reading is very important in what is in the successfulness in our academic career, or even reading may enable us to be successful in the workplace. When you are working out there, then reading may help you to be more successful. So the implication of your finding may give significance recommendation to learners, teachers, and probably the policymakers, the school management, for example. And then the last question that you should answer is, what are the rationale and hypotheses of your study? So once you have established the research questions, you may have to imagine what might be the answer to your questions. So if you do not have any imagination, any expectation at all about the possible answer to your questions, that might be not a good question. So the question should be able to be answered even before you do the research, what we call the hypothesis. So the expected answer to your questions is what you call the hypothesis. And once you imagine the possible answer, then you can also justify the significance of the study. So if later you complete your study and you have already the answer to your questions, and that is what we call research findings, then you can imagine how your findings will contribute to our field, to the learners, teachers, practitioners, the school management, policymakers, and the theory of the language acquisition itself, the development of the theory in our field. Okay, so far, if you have any questions about the elements or the contents of background in brief, is the outline that you your background should contain. If you have any comments or questions, you may just interrupt during the presentation. You don't need to wait until the end of the presentation. Okay, let's see if there is no comment. Okay, let's see some relationship between background and literature review. In the previous last week, we discussed about the relationship or the processes of conducting research, and then I show that the literature review is an ongoing process from the beginning to the end of your study. So in the beginning, you do some literature review, and then you can formulate your research topic. But then the literature review will help you also to establish the background of your study. Without any literature review, it is impossible to establish or to write the appropriate background of your study. The relationship can be shown, but the two are different, of course. The background is in the beginning of a research proposal, definitely correct, while the literature review will usually comes after the background, the first one. The second one, the background provide the context of the study, but then in the literature review, a comprehensive overview of all the literature that you have read should be presented. So more detailed, more elaborated information on the articles that you have read, on the concept that you have read from the books, for example, more detail. Those detail or elaboration in the literature review should be summarized in a brief way or concisely, and then the summary will be presented in the background. The third difference is the background provide a historical perspective and highlight the significance of the study, while the literature review is a kind of critical analysis of the articles of the literature that you have collected. So what we mean by historical perspective, uh, if you are talking about, for example, vocabulary, then you may want to look at what experts say from the early years until now about vocabulary. So you may want to see how the understanding of what we mean by vocabulary mastery from the beginning until now. So you can find out who is the earliest expert discuss about the vocabulary mastery, the concept of vocabulary mastery. And then other aspect, other aspects may extend the understanding or the description of vocabulary mastery that is set up by the first one. But then the definition, the description, and the concept of vocabulary mastery may change over time or maybe extended over time. And then you may have the most recent one. So you will have a kind of timeline of the development of the concept or the variable that you are investigating. While in the literature review, you have a critical analysis of each of the concepts of the concept presented by experts in the field. And the next one would be the difference in terms of the length of the description. In the background, you should not elaborate the literature that you review. It means that you only summarize. Okay. Or even if you have, for example, 5 or 6 articles that have the same idea, you may summarize the ideas from the 5 articles, and then you briefly put it on the background. So it is a summary of 5 findings of research, which agree one another, and you try to uh, summarize and make some kind of statement by using your own words, of course, and then you include all the 5 articles in that. So it must be brief. So once again, the literature review will be an elaboration of those articles. You should provide detailed review. So not only their findings, which are the same from one article to another, but you may explain that in terms of methodology, in terms of the subjects that the research study are involved, and so forth. So detail of the articles we found in the literature review. So these are the difference between background and literature review. So once again, the most important one is that all literature that you review in the literature review should also be found in the background or vice versa. The summary that you make in the background should also be found in the literature review. The difference is that what you write in the literature review is an elaborated form result of your analysis of the literature, while in the background, it is a kind of summary of those articles. Uh, when we are talking about a summary of research studies that we have read, we, we may present it in 3 forms. The first one is you try to collect all research studies which have the same findings, similar findings. And then you want to group the other one, which have a different or contradictory findings. So, and then you may want to compare both, okay? You may want to compare both. You may also group the research study based on the area, whether the study is done in an English-speaking countries or in English as foreign language countries. So they made different findings because of the location, for example, or the context in which the study is done. Okay. Yeah, this is only a repetition, so you can we can. I want to show you how an example of this is an example of this is background. A study entitled Teaching Children to Question What They Read, an attempt to improve reading comprehension through training in a cognitive learning strategy. So this is an experiment. So the researcher wants to find out one strategy, that is the what we call training the students to question what they read. And then this is the cognitive learning theory. And then the researcher want to see how the strategy will improve the reading comprehension of the learners. Now, if this is the topic, what kind of information that should be included in the background? So in the beginning, you may want to, the researcher talks about the concept of reading and then its relationship with workplace. You may want to exchange the first aspect with the second aspect, the relationship between reading and successfulness in school or academic success, reading and curricular skill and successes. So this may be the first, this is the second, doesn't matter, but that this is the important one. It explains about the relationship between school and reading and workplace out there or employment. There are a lot of research about that, and then those research are cited in order to support the idea of the importance of reading comprehension in the workplace and in school. And then It also provides some kind of issue about the poor ability of reading of the learners. And there are a lot of study about that, including the study in Indonesia done by Sartono et al. In 1995. Junior secondary school student in 6 provinces, for example, and shows the what is the poor reading comprehension ability of the learners. And other studies in other countries also are also cited. So this will show the importance of reading, because reading will play an important role in the school success and in the workplace. And the second one, there is a kind of critical analysis of the reading as a basis for school success. There are a lot of studies indicating and indicating that the reading ability is significantly correlate with the success in school. Or even there are some studies indicating that those who have low reading ability, what they call poor reader, may become some kind of class repeater. They may not be promoted to the next level of the class because their reading not is not sufficient. So, or even some student may drop out from school because of their reading ability is poor. So that is the importance of reading in school success. By explaining this, okay, then the reader will uh, probably agree with us as the researcher that reading is really important to investigate. And in terms of this topic, that means that reading should be improved, because in some cases the reading ability of the students is quite low, as indicating as cited in the what is a lot of studies. Okay, next, when talking about the importance of the study, then it says here, once you train your student to be a better reader, then it is possible to reduce a possibility of the students to drop out from school. And the higher their reading ability, the more likely that the student will be also achieve better achievement in other areas of studies, not only in language, but also in social science, in sciences, and in math, for example. So by explaining this, we already show the importance, the urgency of doing this research. We can justify it by saying, for example, uh, how many students repeat the same class due to their reading ability, and how many students drop out of school due to their poor reading ability. So by showing this, then the reader will understand the importance of improving the reading ability of the learners. So this is what we call the importance or the significance of the study. Or even when we are reading the report from PISA, for example, okay, the different type of reading program which try to improve the reading skill and the reading ability of the learners. There are a lot of studies on this. Here are some. There is what we call the National Reading Panel, which investigate the ability of the students' reading comprehension periodically, every 2 years. Then this national reading panel will assess the reading ability of the learners, and then they will report the reading ability within the nation. So we can cite those findings, and then we show the importance of our study. After explaining all this, maybe in uh, 2 or 3 pages, then you come to what we call the transitional paragraph. You will write 1 or 2 paragraphs leading your readers to the problem that you are going to investigate. So uh, before you explain the problem and then the research questions, you may have 1 paragraph, we call the transitional paragraph, which will lead the readers to your problem. This is very important in order that you uh, you persuade the readers to read further in order that they can see the problem that you are going to investigate. Usually we call it the transitional paragraph, leading the readers to the problem that you are going to investigate. And then finally, you will state the problem. And this may consist of 1 paragraph of problem explanation or problem description, and then followed by questions. So the problem should be explained first in 1 paragraph or maybe 2 paragraphs. And then after explaining that narratively or descriptively, then you may formulate the research question. And the research questions may consist of 1 broad question, 1 general question, and several sub questions, specific questions in relation to the broad questions. For example, if you are talking about reading ability, you may want to break it down into the students' reading ability for comprehending literal questions, and the second one relate to the comprehension ability for inferential question, and probably you move on to the one like the critical questions. Do the students have good ability in critical comprehension of the text that they are reading? So that is the specific questions based on larger or broad questions that you first formulate. So these are basically how we write our background. So if you have any questions or comments, you may raise your hand. The assignment in your previous course, Introduction to Educational Research, you have identified a number of articles. I asked you at least 20 articles related to your topic, and now you may have to find more. The more articles that you read, the more likely that your background will be appropriate. If you refer to what people have found out in their studies before, that will show the gap between what you are going to investigate and what have been done by people. The importance of finding the definition of the variable that you're investigating is that you will start with that in the beginning of your background. If you are talking about, for example, writing, and then you may want to talk a little bit in the beginning about how really writing plays important role in the student's life in school, while talking about the description or the concept of writing itself. the purpose of writing. For example, you make a summary of what the expert says about writing, and then you go further with the studies that have been done on writing. Okay, any comments or questions? Okay, you can look at the articles that I have uploaded in the group, WhatsApp group. I uploaded 2 articles, and then you can take a look at the background of the study, or the introduction of the article. And then you can see how the researchers explain the background to show us the importance of the study that they are conducting on the topic, and also showing the gap, okay, what have been known, and then what is not known yet. And that is the one as the target of the study, and the distance between what have been known and what is to be known is called the gap. Any comments or questions? No? Okay, so you are now have the time to write your background, and I hope that you try to find more uh, articles in relation to your topic. The more articles that you have, then the more likely that you will have a good understanding of the topic, and then you can show what people have found out, or what we call what we know now, in order to show how it is different from what you are going to investigate, what you expect to know later after doing the research. So your ability to show the gap and to place your own study within the existing studies can only be shown by reading more and more articles in relation to your topic. Any comments? Okay, if you don't have any, then I'd like to once again to remind you that you have to read the you have to watch the video that I have uploaded in the group. The way that we cite, in order that we are we can avoid the plagiarism. I believe that you have already taken the academic writing and essay writing, and in which you learn about uh, scientific writing, including quoting, citing, and referencing. The video is a kind of technical skill how we cite. Karena di dalam tulisan kalian masih banyak sekali yang keliru dalam menulis kutipan. Bahkan pengalimatannya. Ini yang paling banyak salah di pengalimatannya. Nah, itu sebenarnya itu diajarkan di writing dalam mengutip. Banyak yang salah karena dipengaruhi oleh bahasa Indonesia. Misalnya, kalau kalimat itu dimulai dengan keterangan, harus kita periksa baik-baik, karena kadang-kadang tidak punya subjek. Ya. Ingat, setiap kalimat harus ada subjek, ada predikat. Ya, yang banyak itu yang menggunakan kata according to Harmer, 1986, langsung kata kerja di situ. States that. Itu pasti karena tidak ada subjeknya, kalimat itu salah. Kalau langsung subjeknya itu penulisnya Harmer 1986 states that, itu benar. Jadi ada subjeknya. Kalau tadi itu banyak keliru karena pengaruh bahasa Indonesia. Seringkali bahasa Indonesia itu keterangannya langsung diikuti dengan kata kerja atau predikat. Ya, itu yang seperti itu harus diperhatikan dan cek kembali kalau menulis supaya jangan ada kesalahan-kesalahan yang sangat mendasar ya, yang seharusnya tidak salah lagi. Itu bisa dilihat cara pengutipan itu di video yang saya kirimkan. Any comments or questions? Ya, kalau tidak saya akan berikan kesempatan kepada kalian untuk bekerja sendiri-sendiri, menyempurnakan dan menyelesaikan tugas pertama ini, yakni background of the study sampai kepada research problem, ya, sampai kepada research problem. Ingat waktu 2 minggu, jadi sudah harus di submit tugas ini, dan kita akan mendengarkan sajian dari kalian. Kalau tidak bisa semuanya, nanti akan diacak siapa yang akan menyajikan, menampilkan background dari penelitiannya itu. Jadi Anda boleh membuat background secara lengkap dalam bentuk Word, kemudian bersiap untuk menyajikannya dalam bentuk PowerPoint. Jadi yang disubmit itu adalah Word, tapi untuk presentasinya dibuat masing-masing untuk bisa ditampilkan jika sampai saatnya nanti. Kalau ada yang selesai lebih awal, tidak usah menunggu sampai 2 minggu, boleh saja minggu depan sudah siap. Apalagi yang sudah mengerjakan tugas pada semester lalu, sisa menyempurnakan saja supaya bisa memenuhi penulisan latar belakang yang lebih baik. Baik, kalau tidak ada, kita akan selesai sampai di sini saja. Nanti masing-masing akan punya waktu bekerja untuk menyelesaikan tugas yang pertama ini.
Oh iya, Prof.
Jika ada pertanyaan atau komen, boleh dimasukkan di grup. Nanti saya akan senantiasa mengecek di grup, sehingga kalau ada pertanyaan, mungkin bisa saya, kalau pertanyaan itu pantas untuk diketahui oleh semua, saya akan jawab di situ supaya bisa dilihat oleh semua. Oke, baik. Saya kira demikian. I hope everyone is learning something and can apply this understanding to complete the first assignment, writing the research background based on the topic that you have selected. I'll thank you all for participating, and please work smartly, and also remember to take care of your health. Take care of your health, meaning that you may want to take rest in some occasion, and you have to manage your time to work on assignments that you are assigned to do by your lecturers, because you are taking several courses. There might be a lot of work, but then you should also take a rest. Thank you very much. I'll meet you again sometime next week. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Prof.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Prof.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, remember to check your WhatsApp group to watch the video first before you work on your assignment, because that is the technical ability to cite works and to make references. Thank you. Once again,
Yes,
Assalamualaikum and take care. I'll
Yes,
end the
Prof.
meeting.